Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Jantmor, and I'm excited to bring on my next guest, the amazingly talented Roger Craig Smith. He has voiced Batman, Sonic, Ezio, and a plethora of other characters. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring on Roger Craig Smith. Hi, how are you?
Dude, relax.
How'd you know?
Take a deep breath. My goodness.
He literally knew. Oh my goodness.
Well, I mean, it's not like you're hiding it, you know? I mean,
from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for coming on. It means the literal world to me. You don't know how much it means. Thank you so much for taking a chance on me and coming on here. I grew up on your voice, and it's such an honor to be speaking to you and just being able to say my words and ask my questions. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. And you're very, very kind. And you should know that Chris Edgerly reached out to me and he just said, hey, just did this great interview with a really nice guy and said he was trying to reach out to you. And I wanted to put you guys in touch. So yeah, kudos to you for running a good operation there. So thank you for having me as well. So I'm happy to be here. And it's like, hey, this is what we're doing during COVID and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm happy to participate. So thank you.
A couple interesting things I wanted to discuss before we get into the nitty-gritty of this interview. I was looking up a couple things about you, and one cool thing I found out about you is you're a drummer, and you played when you were younger. So talk a little bit about that. Drum set in the back.
Yeah, well, an electronic kit. So yeah, so the story behind that is I was always drawn to drums and percussion, I think, as a kid. I can remember singing in a children's choir for like a big, it was like a Christmas show that we were doing at the church that I was at, and there was this one portion of the song. It was like a contemporary version of like some classic holiday tunes, and it was like, I think it was like a rock and roll version of "Oh Come All Ye Faithful" or something like that. And there was this one section that would always break down, and where it was just the drums, and I was always like, you know, as a little kid, I mean, I would have been maybe 7, 8 years old. I just thought it was the coolest, you know, part of the song, and forever I wanted to play the drums, and I was always interested in the drums. And it wasn't until I was about 16 that my mom like rented me a drum kit. And I went about it all wrong. I took piano lessons, then clarinet lessons. And it was like, you know, I think my family was trying to get me into what they considered to be a proper instrument or that kind of thing. And then she rented me this kit, and I just basically became self-taught. And so I developed a whole bunch of bad, you know, habits, and was not doing things correctly. And into my early 20s, I played, and I'd been in a few bands and things like that. And then just in the last like 2 years, I was like, I'm going to stop. I mean, I bought my dream drum kit, which it's stacked in the back. The acoustic kit is stacked in the back for the sake of the neighbors. But I remember getting a dream kit when I moved up to LA, and I was like, okay, this is my dream DW drum kit. This is my lifelong kit kind of a thing. And then I sat down and started playing again. And I was like, man, I know I'm doing it wrong. It doesn't feel right. And so in the last like 2 years, said I'm going to stop playing entirely because I wanted to just forget it. I wanted to forget all the muscle memory, forget all the bad habits. And then I just started working with, there's a voice actor by the name of Courtney Taylor, who you may have heard of. And she put me in touch with a gentleman by the name of Tommy. Tommy Rickard is an incredible drummer, and he's also a voice actor. So it's a good little fit. And he's just amazing behind the kit. And he and I, you know, we're hanging out at a Super Bowl party. Like, I guess it was almost 2 years ago now. And I just started talking drums with him, and we were chatting about a couple different things. And he was like, yeah, man, he goes, I've been right where you were at. He was like, I also was like a self-taught guy. And he's like, and I developed all those bad habits. And he said, then I went on a tour with a band, and I would watch these guys that were playing like, you know, super fast, like hardcore stuff. And he was like, they weren't tired, and they just looked so smooth and fluid. And he's like, I got to learn. So he went and did all the training and the lessons and all that stuff. So when he started working with me, it was like a total breakthrough. And I was like, oh, you know, he showed me the proper stick handling and all that kind of stuff. And so now I'm back into it, and I'm having fun. That's just the little electronic kit is for me to kind of pop on the headphones and just kind of zone out for a little while and practice stuff. But I'm back to basically doing just rudimentary, simple stuff, paradiddles and just rolls, and trying to learn, you know, the syncopation book, and trying to like go through little exercises and stuff. But I love it. Yeah, I love it. It's a neat thing to go back to in my mid 40s and like kind of reconnect with that thing that I had such a strong passion for. So it's pretty cool.
I'm a big drum guy. I love drums. I literally wanted
Nice.
drums as my first instrument. If I could turn it right here, you can see there's a guitar in the back.
Yeah.
Because I begged my mother for an instrument, and she said, "I'm definitely not getting you drums, so stick with the guitar." So I'm playing guitar now, but I love it. I love music. I'm a big music guy, so
Nice.
One of my other passions. How did the environment in which you were raised influence your career decisions?
Say that last part again. I'm sorry. I'm getting like too many notifications of text messages, and I'm trying to get rid of them, but I can't see.
Oh no,
it's distracting.
Okay.
I'm like, who's texting and what? All right, sorry. Ask that question again. Sorry.
Yeah, of course. So, how did the environment you were raised in influence you as a person?
That's a really good question. That's a very good question, because I think we are all products of our upbringing. And as I've gotten into middle age, I think, I'm becoming more and more aware of like why I do the things I do, how I found myself in this career field, why I was trying to be funny and silly and creative and all that kind of stuff. So I think it absolutely, you grow up as a product of your environment, and I'm not unique in having challenges with, parental issues. So the idea that, you're sort of influenced by all of that kind of stuff, even unbeknownst to you at that age. I think that's what kind of put me into the, oh, please like me, let me entertain you, let me make you feel happy, let me try to make you laugh, let me have you laugh at me, and that's okay, so that we can, I can disarm and, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that absolutely every fiber of my being is as a result of having grown up with my unique set of parents, just like everybody out there. I think we are all absolutely, a walking, living, breathing, example of like, oh, you had this, or oh, you experienced this in your life, or that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it absolutely did. It's how I found myself in this job. I talked to my buddy Fred Tatasciore, voice of Hulk. Hey, Fred. Fred from Avengers Assemble and myriad other projects, who's like one of my favorite human beings, and he and I will often talk about this pendulum swing that you do as a voice actor, where it's like over on this far extreme is you're the greatest thing that's ever happened to this industry and you're so talented they don't even know what to do with you, and over here on this other extreme is like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't find out that I have no clue what I'm doing and I'm so scared to death and I have zero confidence. And we try to keep it right, just ever so vibrating between that little middle section there, because we have the need to get the affirmation and to get the victories and to book a gig. And then also we have to be able to tap into the confidence that even if it's fake, to be able to deliver the performance when it's asked of you, so that you can step into the role and be like, okay, well, I booked the job, they want me to be here, I got to do this. But you also don't want to get to the point where you get this big head going. And I've dealt with that in my career, and like try to, realized how unhealthy that can become and destructive and all that stuff. So yeah, it's and Fred talks about his upbringing as well. We just talk about there's this insatiable need to want to entertain or to have that creative outlet, and it's what drums are. That's what voice acting and stand-up comedy was for me. That's what screenwriting as my major was. That's what all the theater that I did as a kid, all that stuff was just me trying to find my way. It's like I've got to get this out of me, because otherwise the brain just won't shut down. So yeah, and that to me is a product of my upbringing. So
we're definitely going to talk more about that, because I'm very interested. When I would watch your interviews, by the way, I've watched 20 interviews of you a day, per day. I had to get to learn everything.
Are you getting?
Yeah.
So, hey, well, let that be a lesson to everybody out there, because right now you've already asked me 2 questions that nobody's ever asked me. So it's like, the idea that it's not there's so many inevitable, and hopefully, I mean, if I'm about to just sabotage your list, but I mean, inevitably somebody says what's the one bit of advice you'd give somebody to starting out in voiceover, and what role would you like to do that you haven't done? And there's a lot of things that you'll see just repetitively, and I find that there's a lot of people who don't want to do the research on, do I want to be a good interviewer? Let me see what interviews this individual may have done, and maybe I can ask this person some different questions, or I'll throw out all the interview questions all together and just roll with whatever the topic of this, that kind of thing. So kudos to you for doing your research, and I'm so sorry, because I'm sure you've seen just answer after answer after answer of the same thing from me on many interviews.
yeah, that's what I try not to run into. I really want to make this a unique and different experience for you and the viewers all the time. That's just something that I personally need to do, or I won't feel accomplished. So I'm glad that I could do that and ask some new questions for you.
Nice. Love it.
So what was your first memory of creating and doing voices?
So you know what's funny? I guess, I don't know when the first memory would be, but there's this thing that stands out to me as a defining moment. If I go, oh yeah, how funny. I always had like mimicry. I was always mimicking and trying to recreate, you know, if it was comedy routines of people that I had seen, or if it was telling a joke, or if I was telling my parents, you know, a story of something that happened that day at school, I would try to become the people that I was, you know, talking about. If it was a principal or a fellow student or anything like that, it's like I'd try to become the character that I was using to tell the story. But I can remember being, I think it was homesick or something, and my parents had to take me into the office for work. So my mom took me into the office, and I was just like told to like go in this back room and just, you know, you can hang out in here and you can play with your dinosaur toys and all that kind of stuff. And so I was in there and playing with my little plastic dinosaur toys just on the floor. And I guess there were people in the office that kept trying to figure out where a certain sound was coming from. And they couldn't figure out, like, they're like, what is going on? Is there like is there something in the wall? Like, is there an animal that's like, and I don't remember what sounds I would have been doing, but it would have, you know, I guarantee I was just a little kid just going, you know, like making little dinosaur noises. And finally they went and got, like, my dad was the owner of this particular company, or at least I think the head guy. I don't know if he was the owner of the company. I was so little, but they went and got him, and he was trying to figure it out. And then finally my mom was like, oh, I think I know what it is. Opens up the office door, and then the lady that was in the room next goes, is that what all that was? I was just this little kid making all these weird sounds and noises. So I think from an early age, I just started trying to figure out, well, how do I take that sound and recreate it? And, you know, you cut to some 40 years later, I would imagine I would have been about 4 or 5. And the only thing I can really do that I still am trying to practice is just, that's just about it. So it's just, as a grown man, this is as good as it gets. You go from little boy dinosaur noises to a grown man going.
That's crazy, because that's kind of where we kind of have a similar thing going. When I was a little kid, I'd try to do like voices of like Batman or Optimus Prime, Transformers, or, you know, it's awful, but I try to do like Optimus Prime and stuff like that growing up, and try to mimic and like create what they were trying to do. So
totally,
yeah.
And it all leads to fart sound. That's where it all goes.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
where
I hate to break it to you. That's just what it does.
So how has your voice acting helped you as a person?
How's my voice acting helped me as a person? I don't know. I mean, you know, I don't know. I don't know how voice acting has helped me as a person. You know, maybe just like doing different roles and stuff like that, and kind of like understanding empathy and understanding more of like trying to shed your ego and shed, you know, your first world problems, and understanding that, you know, people experience things in a very different way than you do, and vice versa and all that. So maybe that, I don't really know. I mean, yeah, that's a trip, because I mean, it's like a lot of things that I was doing prior to this are what got me to this. And I would argue that most of that stuff was more influential in me kind of finding voice acting than it was sort of the other way around. I don't know that voice acting necessarily influences, you know, my day in and day out life right now. It's something I do. It's my job. It's a really fun gig. I like the challenge of the gig. I like the challenge of trying to acquire the work and the gig. But as soon as I'm kind of done, I'm sort of done. It's always a trip to me. I live in Idaho now, and down in LA, where I was for, I mean, literally, I've grown up in Southern California my whole life, was there up until October of this year. And I mean, I've had a place in Idaho since 2011, and my goal was always to eventually just wind up here, for the nature and the night skies and all that. And then the pandemic hit, and it kind of helped force, you know, the industry into recording remotely. And I thought, all right, time to go. Let's take advantage of this, not to diminish the horribleness of the pandemic, but to take advantage of the situation and get up here. And while I go out in places in Idaho, in the first like month of being here, it was like I'd be someplace and, you know, talking to a cashier, or getting the home fixed up and working with a contractor, and somebody would just inevitably kind of go, anybody ever tell you, there's a service technician at a Toyota dealership, and he was like, anybody ever tell you got a voice for radio? And I was like, oh, how funny. Yeah. I was like, I've heard that, but it happened. I mean, within a month, I must have had like 10, 15 times of just random people kind of going, you have a really interesting voice. Like, I think you look like, are you in broadcasting or this kind of thing? And in LA, no, because everybody in LA is in the business in some way, shape, or form, or it's a little more jaded and, that kind of thing by comparison. So it is kind of funny to think that sort of thing that is, I don't think anything of it. It's not like I walk in, to the grocery store and try to do, Sonic the Hedgehog or start doing, I don't put on a voice. I just think, well, I'm just talking. I'm doing what I do. And yet people respond to it here. And all of a sudden I'm reminded of the fact like, oh yeah, how funny, that is my gig. And so maybe there have been things that have influenced the way that I speak or how I approach talking or that kind of thing as a result of voice acting. But I don't know that it really does influence me as a person as much as I would be hosting, charity events and doing stuff like that, or comedy routines for a private gig. And doing the MC work and stand-up comedy and all that kind of stuff. And people at those gigs would ask, you have a nice speaking voice, or do you work in radio? Or, in that environment down in LA, that would happen, but not just going out and about daily life. Nobody really cares. Everybody down there is just kind of like so busy and, frantic and stressed out. And up here, it's kind of funny. I'm like, oh, that's right. The industry isn't up here. And so more people are like, oh, you sound different. And I don't think anything of it. And in that moment, I'm reminded, I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's my job. That's something that I do because I don't associate with it that way. It's like, I love my work. I don't know that I wanted to define who I am. So it's like, that's why I'm always trying to I haven't done it in months now, not since August. I haven't even touched my camera gear since August, but that was always my thing, is to go out and pursue outdoors, nature, and birding became a big thing for me. And, looking at wildlife and trying to photograph it, and then the night skies and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, that to me, I'd rather share as this is me, you guys. Like, this is a portion of this is a big portion of who I am as a person. I happen to do, and you, chances are you're following me because I happen to be a voice of a character or something that to me isn't real. And it's not to, it's not to talk ill of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily the other way around. It's kind of like, yeah, it's just what I do, but it doesn't define me, I don't think. But wow. but then I'm reminded that it does when somebody goes like, yeah, man, you got a good speaking voice. You ever thought about radio? I'm like, oh, great, yeah, I'll think about it.
I didn't know you lived in Idaho. I thought you lived in California because every voice actor I talk to is in California. Yeah. Or the United Kingdom, or all over the
Canada.
place. Canada. Yeah. They're all over the place. So I thought you had lived on LA time. So that's really cool.
I did. I did, and I was there forever. And it's like, but like I said, this was a retirement plan for me of sorts, where I was like, all right, someday. I've had family in Idaho really kind of throughout my entire life, and so I was like, all right, I think this is where I want to wind up. And so I purchased a place here back in 2011 because it was affordable. And it was like one of those things where I thought, well, that's where I'll plant my seed to be there someday. And then this hit, and it was like, I remember being up here over the summer, and I was doing things that really just are super restorative for me, sitting on a flat water kayak and I was photographing every imaginable bird that I could see. And it was like, and I was learning all this stuff. And it was just calm and peaceful. And then I would be able to work. I'd go and record for a retail client or an animation job, from my little studio. And then I would hop back in the truck and go back out. And 15 minutes later, I was back on the water. And I was like, why would I not? This was what I wanted for a life. And I thought, why am I still? Yeah, I think now's the time to just do it. And within 30 days, I was just offloading where I was and selling and moving, and it was an insane, literally not 3 days ago, I finally got some more boxes unpacked, and I got some flooring put down that I needed to get addressed, because I've never done anything to this house in 9 years. I hadn't really done anything to it because it was just a second place to be like, all right, that's the someday home. And now it's the home. And it was like, oh man, I gotta get this place out of the 1990s. It was like, I gotta do some upgrading here. And ooh, that carpet's not looking so good. So, but now I'm here, and yeah. So it's I know that things could change, and a lot of people are kind of like, well, what are you gonna do if it all goes back to normal? And they expect that you be back down there. I honestly don't think that's going to happen. And to be honest too, I think I've had too many life moments recently that have been, you know, friends and family members that have gone through a lot, that you just start to realize life's too short. And I'm like, I don't know, I guess I'll just have to do this and figure it out if that happens. And maybe I'll have to fly back down from time to time, or maybe I'll drive down and stay there for a week, or, you know, I'm like, I don't know, I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, life's too short. So it was one of those things where it's like, let's get a, yeah. So a lot of people are like, you're in where? I'm like, Boise. And they're like, where is that? I'm like, Idaho. Iowa? No, Idaho. So yeah, it's like, how many potatoes are there? So
that's so cool to learn about this side of you. And let's dive deeper into sort of the other stuff that you do with your pictures. You're into astronomy, correct?
I'm into astronomy, and I'm into it's called astrophotography, which is like when you connect a camera to a telescope. Mm-hmm. And then I do a lot of nightscape photography, which is just a camera and a standard camera lens, where you're taking landscapes at night to showcase the stars, the Milky Way, things like that, the moon, whatever it might be. Oh, there you go. So that's a single image of a rocket launch from Vandenberg Air Force Base when I had a little cabin up in an area that actually my mom lives in full time now, not in that cabin, but in that same community. It's a little area called Bear Valley Springs outside of Tehachapi. It was about 150 miles east of, what do they call it? Lompoc, I think is the way they pronounce it. And that's where Vandenberg Air Force Base is, and SpaceX and United Launch Alliance would launch a lot of rockets from there. And that is basically, so what you're looking at is one, I think that was a single image, long exposure, either that or it's a composite. I think this might be a composite. But you're
basically Instagram will make it bigger, yeah, for you to kind of get the full picture, you know. Yeah.
Well, to give you perspective too, it's kind of like it's the little thing at the very, very top is the moon, and it looks like a line because this is probably about the course of maybe 6 minutes, 7-8 minutes, and the line that goes far to the left, I believe, is stage 2. And so stage 2 of the rocket that puts it actually into orbit. Stage 1 is the sort of first little dangling line that goes down left, as it was going either, I think that one, they actually just let it go out to sea and they just let it crash there. They didn't try to pick it back up. And all the smoke that you see is just basically this stage separation between stage 1 and stage 2. And I think that was a SpaceX rocket. Yeah, because I don't think ULA does different stages like that to my knowledge. I think they have side boosters that pop off, but it doesn't result in that kind of an image. But yeah, that was just after sunset. It was really gorgeous.
I mean, y'all look at these pictures, amazing, one after another. I mean,
the star trails, that's astrophotography.
These are amazing pictures.
Oh,
man.
Look at that guy.
Ooh. But just talk about how you, so what got you interested in this? Like, what made you realize that, hey, I want to start taking these photos. This is a beautiful world.
So that's a great photo that you stopped on right there, because that's literally, I'm going to get the Messier title of it. I think it's M16. That's the Eagle Nebula, which actually contains the Pillars of Creation. So if you want to know why I got interested in this, go look at, or for everybody out there, just Google Hubble Pillars of Creation image. And it's one of the most, like, to this date, to me, it's one of the most spectacular images that Hubble's ever nabbed. And this is like, from Earth, we can see the Pillars of Creation in that photo. And nothing will ever come close to what Hubble gets from down here. But I can just remember thinking, how can we capture some of this stuff? And in just trying to capture that stuff, all of a sudden I found myself out there in the moment of just working on something and being very focused and very present. And so what ended up happening was, it literally by accident, you know, in the industry, you tend to always be living 6 months to a year down the road. You're concerned about whether or not you've got projects that are still coming out. You want to know what new projects are coming so that you can start preparing. You want to try to be competitive. You want to see take the temperature, find out which way the wind's blowing, all that kind of stuff to see, am I going to be competitive and relevant? What am I hearing people doing in their performances that I need to try to make sure that I'm also doing? So you tend to really be, just be, always someplace else. And in pursuing this, as a hobby, that was the one hobby I could do when I didn't have to worry about whether or not I'd be needed by a client last minute, which is very often how the industry works. If I went for a bike ride or a hike, that was a surefire way to have the phone ring. My agent would call up and go, hey, CBS needs you to do a promo. Can you be ready in 15 minutes? And I'm like, no, I got it. Like, no, let me turn around. I got another 40 minutes to get back to my car. And then a 20-minute, I'm like, tell them an hour and a half. And it's like, sometimes you'd lose the gig because they're like, well, they needed you in 15 minutes. And so like, yeah, like, oh crap. They said, don't worry about it. We'll get you next week. And it's like, yeah, which means somebody else got it. Doing a hobby like this at nighttime, there's no jobs. I mean, the industry's done. And so I found this thing that I could do at night where I didn't have to worry. I could just focus on being present and just doing what I was doing. And it suddenly became like super restorative for me, to say nothing of the challenge of trying to get an image and try to take a photograph of something that's out there, that's that far away, that's, you know, you can't even see with the naked eye. All the learning you have to do to try to figure it out, and all the, you know, the computer work and the telescope work and all these things that I was horrible at. But then as it's doing what it's doing, you just sit back and kind of stare up and start thinking about stuff, and you just start or you see a meteor, or you hear owls, or, you know, all of a sudden the snap of a twig in the forest, and you shine your light over there and you just see two red eyes looking back at you, and it's like it's an elk. You know, it's like all these things that just started happening that really resonated with me and had like a profound, like, positive effect on my life. And it was like, okay, I got to keep doing this. And it became the drug. I mean, it became something that's like, if I don't get enough time under dark skies, I really start to feel anxious. And, you know, like, it's like, no, I need those moments. And so it became something that just, you know, in addition to being a really neat hobby that I really love sharing with people, it became something that I became passionate about. I got involved with the International Dark Sky Association as a delegate for them. And it's a great organization that promotes, you know, education on light pollution, advocacy on reaching out towards local governments, local neighborhoods, educating people on how we can actually reverse light pollution, which, if you look in this is from Stanley, Idaho, back in 2017 during the eclipse. I was up and rented a house for the eclipse. And this is a great dark sky location. In fact, it's in I want to say it's 90, I can't remember how many square thousand miles this dark sky reserve in Idaho is, but it's just incredible. And this is looking about southwest, and the yellow haze that you see to the lower right of that galactic core of the Milky Way is light pollution. That's very likely from like Sun Valley, Ketchum, that area, which is pretty far away, but that's what light pollution looks like. And we take it for granted. I mean, I think 85% of the world's population doesn't get to see the Milky Way. And it's all because of nothing more than light pollution. It has nothing to do with anything. It's just, I mean, Stanley's one of the first places I realized that when you're in a good dark sky location, you don't see the clouds. If the clouds roll in, what ends up happening is the stars start disappearing. And I'm so accustomed to being, you know, sort of raised in Southern California, where when you look up at night, you see gray clouds. Well, the reason why you see gray clouds at night, if there's no moon, is because all the light that's on the ground is going straight up, bouncing off the bottom of the clouds and coming back down to your eyeballs. And so all of a sudden I'd be looking at these stars in the middle of, like, you know, this dark sky reserve, and they would just start disappearing. And it would just be like, all of a sudden you're like, the stars are going away. And you realize, oh, clouds, but we don't have light out here, so there's no light bouncing out the bottom of the clouds, stuff like that. So it's just it just became something that resonated with me big time, and it is something that I've thankfully seen that people enjoy the fact that I share this stuff with them, that I'm sharing something that I'm passionate about and enjoy doing with them. So it's kind of cool. I'm happy that it's received.
Yeah, I looked through like your Twitter, and I'm just like, wow, these are amazing. You do a really great job. I love looking at them, because I was also scrolling through your photography website that you have up, and it's just so cool just looking at this. Cause I'm a big space guy. As a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I love space. I just was and just looking at pictures is just like, it blows my mind. I just love looking at stuff like that. Awesome for you to put those up.
Not too late. You can still be an astronaut. I'm just saying.
Yeah, got plenty of time. Let's switch over into voice acting. I would love to talk about Batman Arkham Origins. Your first time as Batman, if I'm correct?
Okay. Yes, it was. Yeah, it was. Okay. Yeah.
I was playing that game all last night. I tagged you in a photo, but I was playing it all last night. Yeah, it was at like 2 a.m. I played until 2 a.m. until my friends yelled at me to play Fortnite with them. Anyways, but yeah, they're like yelling, we talk about some killing the games. That's like I'm beating up Deathstroke right now.
Wait,
give me a second.
Fortnite? What?
Yeah, get on Apex. So
Much
what was
better.
your reaction to being cast as Batman?
You know, so at the time, you know, both Troy and I can remember texting him and being like, dude, you know, when I found out that he had been cast as Joker too, I was like, bro, this is insane. And we were like, man, you know, can you believe we got this? And then it was like, oh boy, we got this. This could go. This is so I've often described, and maybe you've heard that in one of those interviews, but I've often described voice acting as like, you know, I go in and I birth this vocal baby and I hand the vocal baby over to people. And it's like, it's really not up to me once that sort of situation is over with. It's not up to me what happens, you know, to how pretty the baby might be or ugly the baby might become, or, you know, if the baby sounds right or if the baby has an issue. And so I think he and I both knew that it was like, okay, this is an incredible opportunity, but to know that Kevin and Mark had been doing it for 20 years and that the reception was going to be like, what, you know, who do these guys think they are? And, you know, we've said multiple times, you can't fill the shoes. So it was both frightening and exhilarating and a cool sort of a challenge kind of a thing. But it was just a blast. It was like, it's a really interesting thing because I've had a lot of people say like, you know, how do you approach voicing a character like that? You know, that's been done by other people and been established by other actors. And, you know, I always just say like, you can't think, I don't even think about the fact that it's going to be a big game or that it's going to be well received because I don't know. And the climate can always shift on you due to things that are out of your control. I mean, we look at Cyberpunk 2077. It's like, you know, it's like, wow, a lot of things went wrong. And there's a lot of people that worked on the game that were super passionate about it, that had no intention of it going the way that it did. So these things can happen. And it's like, you know, when you're sort of, you know, aligned with this stuff, it's just a big collaborative thing. So you never know. And so I don't really tend to think too much other than just sort of like show up and go like, all right, I rely very heavily on my director to kind of help me in the scene. And it's literally, it's like, I call it a game of football. It's like, you know, we all huddle up, we talk about the play we're going to try to execute. And it's like, you know, okay, in this one, you know, Batman's fighting Bane and, you know, Bane just, you know, give him a big old uppercut and knocked his mask off or something. It's like, and you're sitting there, you're a little heavy, you know, you're a little winded, you know, you got to say this, say that. And then we move on and it's like, okay. And so, you know, hike, we do the scene. And then we stop and we all huddle up again, go, okay, did we gain 10 yards or did we lose yardage? Or, you know, how did we do? And then you try it again kind of a thing. And so I rely very heavily just to, like in the moment, to rely on the director and not think about the fact that, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm voicing Batman. It's like, at some point you go, I went through the auditions, I went through the callbacks, they selected me, I've booked this, it could change, I could get fired, they could decide things that are beyond my control, you know, that have nothing to do with me, that you know, that's how this industry works. Sonic the Hedgehog movie. And you know, and since those things happen, it's like you go, all right, just, hey, focus on the job you're doing. That's what you've been hired to do. Let's just do this. And you try to do the best you can with each little huddle. So it's just that. But, and then the game came out, it was mixed. And then it was like, and to this day, what's neat is that this many years later, it's still widely regarded as a great storyline. People loved the combat. They found it really hard, which was good. And a lot of people have said, you know, as going back and looking at it, it might have been one of the more solid, you know, entries into the whole franchise. So yeah, I'm very proud and very honored and very thrilled, and I still can't believe I get to sign things and put, you know, Batman next to my name. That's just, that'll never get old.
You and Kevin really make that character for me, and I'm not just saying that because you're here. I've always loved that voice, even as a kid. Even though I was like put off when I was little, because I watched the trailer on I remember sitting in the computer in the living room and said Batman Arkham Origins trailer. I was like, oh my gosh, I love Arkham Asylum. And I looked at it and I heard your voice. I was like, who is this? I was kind of like thrown off. Then I got used to it. Man. Yeah, I was thrown off. But as I got older and I listened to it more, I fell in love with the voice and that you portrayed this character. You did such a great job with Batman. I could really find pieces of myself, even still to this day, in the Batman that you portrayed. So great job on that. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And that's the writing. And I say that all the time. It's like, I'm the luckiest guy on this kind of stuff. It's the same thing when like fans reach out about Assassin's Creed or Apex Legends or any of these characters. When they talk about a moment of something that happened that had an impact on them, I'm happy that I get to perform it, and I'm glad that my performance resonated with them. but I don't write the dialogue. I mean, it's a collaborative effort, yes. If there's something I feel like Batman wouldn't say, maybe there's a way we can try to figure something out, or kind of, you know, butt heads on this and figure out if it's going to work. But for the most part, it's like, that's the writing. And I think back to so many moments in that, and same thing with Assassin's Creed and Sonic and all these games that I've been, you know, a part of. I mean, Dying Light had its wonderful moments as well. But so getting to perform this stuff is always neat. But it's the writing that, I mean, that's screenwriting is my major in college. It was like, I learned very quickly, the greatest thing you can have is, and in the movie industry, they always say you can take a really great script and make a crappy movie, but you cannot take a crappy script and make a really great movie. It's just like the skeletal structure of everything is in the writing to begin with, and it's in the story. And so there are moments that I think of, you know, one of the greatest honors of my life was working with Martin Jarvis as Alfred in that. I was like, Albert. I'm like, that's not. Yeah, I should know this. Albert. Yeah. How many millions of times did I have to say like Alfred? No, I got to work with Martin Jarvis, and the neatest element of Origins to me was just that it was like there was this idea that this younger version of Batman was really struggling with his independence. He was struggling with needing others, and Alfred was kind of his sort of a surrogate father figure in a lot of ways. And the dynamic that they shared in that, the writing in that was second to none. My favorite scene is when, you know, it's this pivotal moment where, you know, Alfred's basically saying, I don't want you to go out there. You're going to get yourself hurt. Batman turns around and says, you know, what do you see when you look at me? You know, the little boy whose shoes you used to tie, you know, a teenager getting ready for his first date. He's like, well, I'm out there, you know, what do you say? Like, while I'm out here, while I'm out there, you're here, or I'm out there. I'm already screwing it up, but no. You know, and it was this great moment where he says, you know, tonight, because Alfred was saying, I'm afraid it'll be your end. And he was like, tonight will not be my end, but it will be theirs. And, you know, and the greatest line I've ever gotten to say, which is, I am the reason the criminals breathe easier when the sun rises. And it was like the hesitation, that's fear. That's what I represent. I was like, yeah, that's such, I mean, it's like, I get goosebumps because it's such good writing. It's like, you know, it's rare that we get to do a lot of that stuff. So it was, I think a lot of people see me as kind of goofy and silly and funny. And so I do a lot of animation, and I love that stuff. And it's like, you know, but I like when I get a chance to kind of, you know, have to hunker down and try to do something a little more on the dramatic side. And that was just, the writing in that game was so phenomenal. So I'm glad you, and I'm glad many other fans enjoyed that.
I will say to this day, and anyone could fight me, I always have arguments with my friends because we're big group good nerds. We argue back and forth about Naruto or Captain America and stuff like that. We always are like, what's the Arkham game that didn't really hit for us? And all of them are like, Arkham Origins. And I literally go down their throat and I'm like, stop, cut it out. Like, that's not, yeah, like, it's so, like, even like you said, there's such good writing and such good scenes, and the cast was on point, and the fighting mechanics was on point. Like you said, some of the fight scenes, fighting was hard. I'm fighting Deathstroke, and I keep getting killed over and over again.
Yeah, Deathstroke, he was hard.
He was really hard, and it was just so much fun to play. And I'm glad the game is getting credit that it deserves nowadays, more so than it did back in 2013. It came out,
2013.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. Getting more. Speaking of 2013, I just want to speak on that because you said in interviews how 2013 was a pivotal point in your life. There was a lot going on, and in some regards, I can see that some aspects of the character of Batman are things that you were going through. You talked about being stressed, having anxiety, that pendulum, you know, you're feeling. Can you go more into that for people who don't know too much about that story?
Well, just at the time, I mean, it was like I had 3 major things that were coming out. I went through a pretty significant personal issue in my life. My family had been dealing with a lot of really unfortunate things. And it was interesting. It was like I was just, when I look back on it, I was just sort of reeling. And I wasn't, you know, I mean, there's no book. Like, how do you get prepared for, you have within, I think it was like a 3-month or maybe a 5-month period, I had the premiere of Avengers Assemble, the animated series as Captain America. I had Disney's Planes being released, you know, in theaters nationwide, where I was voicing the main bad guy, you know, as Rip Slinger. And then I had, you know, Arkham Origins coming out, you know, in October of that year. And I mean, it was like summer. It was just nuts. And going to my first red carpet, you know, like for Disney's planes and doing all that kind of stuff. And it was just, it was a lot to be kind of going through all at once. And so I look back, it's like, it's another example of like, I look back and go, I wasn't there. I was trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? I had just moved to LA from Orange County, where I'd grown up. So I'd left a very long-standing circle of friends that my support base was down there. It's where I went to high school. It's where I went to college. And yet I was just dying from the commute, 5 days a week of like 2.5 hours each way kind of thing. It was just killing me. And so I moved to LA, and I thought, okay, well, now I'm going to start really, hanging out more up here, and I'll start doing this. And it was like, I don't know, it just wasn't resonating for me in a way that I thought it should and would. And I was just kind of like misguided and trying to find my way, trying to figure stuff out, as to who I was and what this industry was all about, all that kind of stuff. But that's really all it was. It was just a time of like kind of going, all right, this is a lot to deal with, by yourself as an individual, and to kind of just not know, a lot of upheaval. I mean, that's really what it was. And I was dealing with a ton of anxiety and just sort of frustration and anger and sadness and confusion, and all in the midst of like one of the biggest years, in terms of high profile projects kind of all happening all at once. That's all it was. I mean, it's like, it wasn't like, just boohoo problems, but for the most part, it was just an interesting thing to kind of look back on and go, all right, I'm glad I went through that at the time that I did. I'm glad that I have kind of come out from it with, a decent degree of perspective on just life issues. Like I say, that's also what kind of like fed into me, just kind of going, all right, get out, go be where you want to be, go be out in the darker skies and the nature and all that kind of stuff up in Idaho, and just let the chips kind of fall where they may. And I'm sure you'll figure it out. It's like, if anything, I could never have ever predicted I could never have foreseen that this would be my life, or that I would have done the things that I've done in my career, or I'm still doing. Like, it's just incredible. And so the idea that, the risk, the anxiety over, should you make a life change, and should you go someplace, or should you do something different, or, don't rock the boat kind of a thing. And it's like, well, I figured out how to do all this so far. Like, why wouldn't I be able to figure out some new way of pivoting or shifting or adjusting if things change because I've moved, or if things change because I've decided I'm going to slow down maybe, or not, or do things, a little more selectively, or that kind of thing. It's like, why wouldn't I think that I should be able to handle that? I've handled all this so far and survived. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I mean, without delving into too much personal stuff, it's kind of like,
yeah, of course,
it's just one of those things where, yeah, I think a lot of people just assume that what you see on social media, or what you see in the, the papers, or on in an interview, or even in just like, the press that covers these things when they come out, that kind of thing, it all looks great, but there's still a human being behind all of that who's experiencing it from a different perspective, and and often, very often, a very unique perspective, and sometimes kind of lonely. It's what I think is one of the reasons why some of the only people that you can really kind of complain to are people who you work with, because otherwise it just sounds like, why are you complaining? What are you dealing with? And it's like, yeah, I know, I get that that it's a great gig and it's a lot of fun, but it comes with its own stresses and its own frustrations, and it can be really just grueling at times. It can be very unfair. It can be very frustrating. It can be like a lot to deal with, especially now with social media, where they want voice actors to be out and present and available to the trolls and all that kind of stuff that you used to be able to it never existed, and then MySpace, and then Facebook, and then Twitter and Instagram, and TikTok, and Facebook, or whatever. It's like, yeah.
I forgot to tell you this in the beginning. I'm so sorry. Because I was shaking. I was literally shaking. Like, you were like, even you saw, I was shaking. But I was gonna say that I have so much love and admiration for you, not only as a voice actor, but as a human being. The things that you've gone through, and how the way you treat the fans is literally amazing. I just love seeing you just interact with them and talk to them and brighten their day and make them smile. I saw this one video where this girl was talking to you, and she was screaming, and her eyes were like bright, and she was just looking at it. I was just like, this man is amazing. So it just goes back to saying thank you again for coming on. Like, this makes my whole day. So yeah.
Well, thank you. No, I feel very fortunate, and I am a very fortunate individual to do what I do, and I try to you know, when I start typing out some of those replies to some of the haters, and it's like type, like, yeah, delete, yeah, type, yeah, delete, type, you know, delete, you know, it's like, oh. I try to remember, and it's like I have said many times, and in other interviews as well. It's like I appreciate that. I'm glad that works for you. I do try to be aware of the fact that I represent a lot of things that are much bigger than I am as just an individual. And so I don't curse on my Twitter feed, and I don't curse on my Instagram, and I try to just share things that are of a positive nature. I mean, I have a background in stand-up comedy and writing, so it's like, believe me, this brain can think of, and this mouth can say a lot.
I was about to say, yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's like I've got a wicked sense of humor, and it's like, but I look at it and I go, but I voice sound like the Hedgehog or Mouse from Give a Mouse a Cookie, and I don't know. It's like why there's so much of that on the internet that it's like, I don't know. Maybe you know, in comedy they called it your first voice. So your first approach to a joke, your first voice is probably not the best joke that you can do. So sit on it. If you think it's a good premise, you know, or if it's good kind of a concept, sit on it and then try to find the more subversive kind of, like, there's something else to find there. And I look at it like, you know, if my first voice is to throw a ton of snark or, you know, pessimism or cynicism or anger or frustration and share that online, there's enough of that. So I look at it like, all right, maybe I can be sarcastic. Maybe I can be kind of funny. How do I clean it up? How do I do, you know, to work with that? Because yeah, I'd rather you feel like you're going to come to my Twitter feed, and every now and then I get a little racy with something, you know, it's like, but I try to keep it as, and I look at it like, yeah, if you're going to show up, you know, I'll try to keep it a fun place for you. I think we might be dealing with a technical, oh, there you are. So yeah, I try to keep it.
Yeah, you're good enough for me. Yeah.
Shoot. Okay.
That's awesome. No, you're good now. You're good now. So it's all great. You're here. All right. I was worried. I was like, no, he's about to cut off. No.
No.
But that's an amazing story that you have. I love interviews because I love learning people's stories and like learning more about your story. So cool to me. I just love that because I learned something new, and I take a piece of. This might sound weird, but I take a piece of each person with me after every interview I leave. Like, I take a piece of their story or what they have told me, and I just take that to heart. And I'll take that with me to the grave. So I just love it so much.
Nice.
To go back into Batman, what makes your Batman different from other versions of this character?
Well, I think that's just in the writing for each for each individual Batman project. I mean, you look at Superman Red Son, that's a very different Batman than what we've seen, you know, versus Arkham. You look at Batman Unlimited, the stuff that I was doing is a little more kid-friendly. It was a little more sort of traditional comic book, you know, sort of chiseled kind of performance. And that's where it has everything to do with the writers and the individual project itself. And so I honestly don't know that the idea of it being my Batman is different than anybody else's Batman is no different than, I shouldn't say it's no different. It's like, to me, it's, well, what I'm on this particular project, we've got a particular crew, and they have this collective, you know, sort of vision that they want to execute, and I'm just one part of that. So it's not up to me. It's not for me to be the one to say, this is the Batman I'm going to do. So I don't think I don't know that there is my Batman is different. It's like, I rely on my director. I rely on the creative people to tell me what version of a Batman they might be going for, and then that's my job, is to try to get as close to that as possible. I don't think there's anything different. I just do what I do and hope that it sticks.
Done an amazing job. Let's switch over from DC into Marvel. Captain America, you voiced one of the most iconic characters ever. I saw an interview that you did, and I was interested. You said when you do the voice of Captain America, you imagine someone barrel-chested. So I wonder, is this a version you have in your head when you're voicing Captain America? That's a pretty
barrel-chested looking. Yeah, that's a pretty barrel-chested looking. Jeez Louise, goodness. That's more like, you know, like barrel. That's like literally wine barrel chest. Captain America. No, you know, it's funny. I always think of a Boy Scout. To me, he's just a big kind of a Boy Scout guy. I would often talk about, there's usually like a posture thing that happens for kind of conjuring up characters, that physically you'll do things to try to help yourself, you know, in conveying a character in a certain way, even just vocally. And to me, Captain America is a little more chest up. He's more military background, so shoulders back, you know, chest out, you know, chin up kind of a thing, in comparison to somebody like Batman, who's a little dark and brooding. I mean, you know, Batman's, there's not a lot of like elevated voice. There's not a lot, he's just kind of he's the Dark Knight. So I try to think of, you know, in comparison, I try to think of Captain America as a little more of the Boy Scout. You know, he's like the old World War II buy war bonds, you know, propaganda poster.
I imagine for Captain America. You're kind of glitching a little bit, so I don't know if maybe it's on my end or your, I don't know. Yeah. But you're not like frozen. I'm just saying it's just
okay.
If you get cut off or I get cut off, I'm just letting you know in advance and letting y'all know. And the audience, don't freak out. But we'll be good. We'll be good. Which was more influential in your life, Marvel or DC?
You know, honestly, it's going to sound like I'm just trying to play both sides, but I think equally. I honestly think just superheroes in general. And it's like, it's funny to me that there's always got to be this Marvel and DC thing. It's like Star Trek versus, you know, Star Wars. Why? Why does it have to be those two things? It's like, you know, throw Spaceballs in the middle of that too. It's like, why not? No, I think all of that stuff, just superheroes in general, the superhero concept, you know, I think everybody, it's one of the reasons why there can be this many entities and entries in that sort of genre is because I think I think everybody just resonates with those stories, you know, about, you know, people doing good for the sake of doing good and trying to help the little guy out, you know. It's like that's usually at the core of almost all superhero stories, and it's like I would just say most of that stuff, it resonates with me because of that. And I don't think I've ever really thought of things in a DC versus Marvel kind of a way.
Let's switch from the world of comic books into the world of anime with Naruto Shippuden and your voice as Datara. You did an amazing job as Datara, but me and my friends, going back to them, we always like argue who's the worst Akatsuki member, not in terms of power, but in terms of like who we're just like and like Datara is like up there because he's just like so cocky and just like art is an explosion and like eating. I love having debates like that. When you were auditioning for that role, did you know what you were getting into?
No. I mean, honestly, it was one of those situations where I think Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who was our voice director at the time, just maybe heard me in a certain role and wanted to see what I could do with it kind of a thing. And I would have had no clue just how well received or how big that character would have been within the whole Naruto universe. So no, I had no idea what I was stepping into, but I was more than happy once I realized, oh, this guy, this was for an anime character. For me, it was a little beefier or something to kind of mess around with. And I loved getting to play opposite of Liam O'Brien. And the moments that we had together were just like really cool. So yeah, that was a very fun role to get to do.
What does Datara bring out of you?
You know what? So bad guys are kind of fun because they just kind of have that sort of deliciously evil kind of weird perspective on the world that's fun to kind of tap into, but only just to tap into it. And so I don't know. I mean, like he also brings about, you know, like a little bit of the frustration over, you know, I guess jealousy and the things that, you know, he really does kind of see himself as he's the ultimate artist. And it's like, I can understand the frustration of not being appreciated or that kind of thing. So maybe that's something that's an interesting thing to kind of tap into. I don't walk around feeling like I'm unappreciated or anything like that. But no, I think it was just it's just fun playing bad guys. Bad guys are, even when I was a kid in theater, it was, I really did not want to be like leading role kind of stuff because it was like, to me, they were boring by comparison. There wasn't much for me to do with a lead role because and I've said this about the Batman and Joker. I mean, there's only so, that's why when you say like, you know, your Batman, it's like, well, my Batman, I could make my Batman, you know, Sonic the Hedgehog, and people would be like, what is up with this Batman? That's not Batman. There's always, with a main character like that, there's a certain sort of like box that they live in, and if you step too far outside of it, it's not going to proceed well because you're just like, that's just not the character. Whereas with like supporting roles, you know, like when I was in theater, it was like, well, do you want to be, you know, do you want to be Lil Abner or do you want to be Pappy Oakham? And I was like, give me Pappy Oakham, because Lil Abner is described in the play as, you know, this, and then it's like, you know, Pappy Oakham is Lil Abner's grandpa, and I'm like, okay, well, that means I could do whatever I want to do. I could do a different voice, I could do a different character, I could dress up the way I want to dress, that kind of a thing. And so bad guys to me tend to be a little bit more along those lines. They tend to offer a little bit more fun to kind of play around with stuff than your straight ahead hero character. So yeah, I think that's what Datara kind of like gave me a chance to do, is to kind of start branching into some other stuff and making some more other choices that you rarely get to do when you're just doing, you know, hero type characters.
What is your favorite Datara moment?
The ultimate fight, and when he finally just sacrificed himself. Yeah, I can just remember like planning for that voiceover session and knowing that I was going to be screaming my head off, and I was like, okay, I really want to get this moment where he finally just obliterates himself. Spoiler alert, that we got that and did it right.
People really wanted me to talk to you about. This is the main character. People were like, oh my god, I can't believe you're talking to Sonic. And people really wanted me to ask you about Sonic. That was my first time introduced to the character actually was through your voice as Sonic. And same for my little brother who's in the room right now probably playing like Sonic or something. But that was our first time was through your voice. How does it feel to be such an integral part of the Sonic legacy?
That's just, it's an incredible honor. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that, you know, we're celebrating 10 years as of, I believe, November, where I've been voicing Sonic the Hedgehog, and we've got the 30th anniversary of the character coming up next year in 2021. So it's just, I mean, it's insane to have been a part of something for so long. To have done the 2 Disney films was incredible. Like, it's just such a neat thing. I mean, like, of all the, I always laugh, like, if I was to say to somebody, you know, like if somebody says, you know, hey, what do you do for a living? And if I told them, and I always say, I'm only as legitimate as anything they've ever heard of. And so the one character that does seem to work from just about every age range is Sonic the Hedgehog. So even somebody my mother's age might go, oh, I think I've heard of that, you know, like that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, it's such a neat thing. It's like, this is like, I mean, you got Sonic, Mario. I'm trying to think of, you know, 2 other more iconic characters that sort of like really and truly represent, you know, gaming from its earliest days. I mean, those 2 just kind of have survived and lasted out of, you know, the longest out of all of them. So to get a chance, and nothing lasts forever, and I never know, you know, when I'm going to get the call from Sega. I was like, all right, they're ready to, you know, turn the page or do something different. But so far, haven't gotten that call, and to still get to be a part of this stuff is just incredible. So it's a strange thing to kind of go, yeah, it's weird, like somebody like yourself saying, like, oh yeah, no, I grew up on this stuff, and it's like, that's right, you know, I've been doing that for years. 10 years ago. Yeah, somebody who's 20 was 10 years old. So yeah, they were a kid playing those games, and it's like that kind of stuff starts to sink in. You go, yeah, okay, that's a trip. That's but it's an honor. I mean, it's a chance to kind of, you know, hang your hat on something. It's why one of those interview questions when they say like anything you know want to do that you haven't been able to do, I'm like, no, I mean, I've done, lightning has struck so many times in my career. I'm always, you know, looking forward to the next super creative, original new thing that, you know, I couldn't have imagined being a part of. You know, like when they created that animated series for Unikitty, we had so much fun on that show, and the writing staff and the production staff were so incredible. It's like that kind of thing going forward, because I've gotten to do things like be Batman, be Captain America, be Sonic the Hedgehog, be Kyle Crane, be Chris Redfield, be Mirage, be Ripslinger. You know, like all these different things, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, and somebody's gonna, you know, point that out. It's
You play this one character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's like there's a photograph of me where I did some. I just did it like for a headshot shoot. I just bought dime store, like cheap costume store versions of characters that I had played, and I thought, oh, this would be fun. I'll try to put on everything. And to this day, people still go, "Where's Kyle Crane? Where's Chris Redfield? Why don't you have Mirage on there?" And I'm like, because this was done like 4 years ago. It's like this stuff, you know, it's like, and I couldn't get everything, and they don't have everything for everybody. I'm like, sorry, you know. Yeah, it's like, where's Datara? Like, yeah.
Why don't you put Datara's headband on your head?
It's always something, and I always Usually I try to reply and go like, well, why didn't I dress up as the former narrator of Say Yes to the Dress? Huh? You know, like, why didn't I put that on there? Yeah.
So Sonic Boom was a TV show that I loved. I really enjoyed. What happened to that show? Did it get canceled? Did you guys not go on for another season? Like, what was that all about?
So it's funny when you talk about like a lot of people always ask about canceled, and you know, very often what ends up happening is they sign agreements for a run of so many episodes or so many seasons, and now even the term seasons is so like confusing when you consider the streaming platforms, and that, you know, the way they break up certain shows into seasons is always like, wait, didn't we already do that? That's season 1, or that's, and they're like, yeah, they're calling that season 1A or 1B or that kind of thing. And so I don't know that we were ever necessarily canceled as much as we fulfilled our obligation for what was scheduled and contractually obligated to. And usually what you end up doing is you'll do like a 2-season run, a 3-season run of any sort of an animated series, and you hope that you're going to find out that it was successful and that they want to do it again. In this certain circumstance, I don't know that they wanted to do any more than what they had done. And so it wasn't that like we were in the middle of a season and all of a sudden they were like, we're canceling you. It wasn't anything like just what we did. And then that was the run of Sonic Boom. And then they started kind of going back into different versions of Sonic that didn't have anything to do to sort of be connected with the Boom franchise. Like Rise of Lyric and all that style, the bandana, the scarf, and all that kind of stuff, the athletic tape on the shoes. They kind of went back to a more traditional approach to Sonic. And at that point, it was like, all right, well, to still do more of Sonic Boom would be like, well, now we're confusing, you know, where we are with this character. So I think they just opted to stop doing that. And this is a very common thing. Like, people don't understand like the commerce versus art aspect of what we do. And these are franchises and these are characters, and they do things to try to support and to introduce and to keep the audience refreshed and new and growing. And so things will always inevitably change. I mean, it just happens over and over and over again. That's how a guy like me finds themselves in the role of Batman. It's like, well, they wanted to do an origin story, and they wanted to hire some actors that would have like the idea of being a younger version of these people that we've come to know as the voice of the character. But you cannot keep doing the same thing over and over and over again and hope that your audience is going to grow or that it's going to get introduced to a younger audience. It's like, you got to bring those people online, and that means that your art will always change in the name of commerce. And so these things happen. It's just part of the industry. It's how it goes.
We're talking about what happened with the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. Like, that's how the industry works. Sometimes you're working on a project one day, and then the next day, yeah, you're not the same person. I mean, I would have loved to have seen you as Sonic. Yeah.
I would have loved to have been Sonic, but I mean, Ben could not be a nicer human being, and he has done such a great job with it, and he's been so gracious, and he totally understands the fan base, and he's been a real solid human being with the way that he would even bother to like know who some of the previous voice actors were. He would mention all of us in interviews. I mean, he did his homework, and I guarantee you that's Ben being Ben and not him being told to do this by the powers that be for the film company. That's the kind of person that he is. And obviously he got it right from the get-go, and I feel the same way, which is anything that helps the brand and anything that helps introduce this character to a new audience is always a good thing. So it's kind of like, you know, do I lament the fact that I didn't get a chance, you know, to go in and audition? Of course. I mean, I'm an actor. We want to book everything. You know, it's like we want to be involved in everything. But I also understand that it's, like I say, commerce, it's a business, and a company like Sega will license their product to all sorts of things. It's how you see that Sonic the Hedgehog character in different video games or on lunchboxes and backpacks and, you know, school folders and all that kind of stuff. It's like they're taking the character and they license it for use. And that's exactly what happened with that film. And what a huge like thing to have happen to the entire franchise too, for the initial design to come out and have people just revolt, and to have a studio go, all right, we need to make a shift, we need to make a change, and to have that happen, that was incredible. So you know, it's there would have been neat to be a part of it, but it's also like I also get to say that I've been in 2 Disney films, you know, with cameos as that character, and had a blast being a part of that stuff. So it's like I'm not going to complain, you know, like these things happen in this industry all the time. It's just beyond you. You know, it's like when I have like my family will ask, you know, when are you going to work for Disney again? And I'm just like, it doesn't really work that way. It's not like I call up Disney and go, yeah, I'm ready for you guys to work with me again. You know, it's like, I don't know. And that's how the business goes. That's why we audition every single day. To this day, I audition multiple times a day, 5 days a week, constantly. We book about 1 to 2% of everything we audition for.
Now, you talked about the 30th anniversary of Sonic coming next year. Can you tell us anything about that? Are you involved with anything special, something crazy happening, or?
I have no idea.
Okay. Well,
I know nothing.
Let's just wait until next year. Yeah. There are a ton of Apex fans in here. They're going crazy. So I just want to talk about Apex real quick. They love you as Mirage. How did you get that job as that character?
That again was another situation where I just auditioned for something. I mean, it's like, I love that, you know, people assume like that there's some magical thing that happens for us getting these jobs. And I'm always like, you know, it's an audition that shows up, and you go in and you submit an audition from home 9 times out of 10, or from your agency's booth. And then you get a call back if you're fortunate, and you go from there. But yeah, that was just, I honestly don't really recall how that happened. I think I went in for an audition, and I auditioned, and they liked me for this particular role. And I can't remember, I probably auditioned for a number of different characters. And what's funny is, like, for the longest time, I had no idea what I was doing, what was going on. It was one of the first performance capture jobs that I did, where it was like a full mocap suit and all that to do the trailer for the launch of the game. And I remember being so frustrated and super nervous. And I was like looking at, like, you know, the people that I was working with, like, you know, Chantel Van Sant was on there, and I'm like, she's like this gorgeous on camera person, and I'm like, what am I doing in this role? Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And no joke, like, she and I get on the set the first day, and she kind of like as we both get out into the volume, and we're standing on the stage, and I'm super self-conscious for myriad reasons, and I'll share one with you that's kind of silly and funny. But she leans over to me and she goes like, hey, I looked you up, and I know you must do like a ton of these things, you know. And she's like, so, you know, it's like, I'm gonna like lean on you. And I was like, I looked you up, and I'm like, I thought you've done a ton of this stuff. And she's like cracking up, and we're laughing, and it worked out really well. It became, you know, good on-set buddies to kind of be like, okay, well, we don't know what we're doing, and we were getting a ton of different direction, because it was just, I mean, it was this weird sort of like, what is this? I have no idea what this is going to be. And to hear too on like lunch break, this was like, I want to say it was like October. I think it was October. And I was like, you know, on a lunch break, I'm asking one of our creative directors, I'm like, so when is this, like, when is this game coming out? The guy's like, oh, January. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, we're going to drop the game, the trailer, and all of that. It's all going to be, and he's like, and it's going to be free to play. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, it's all going to happen on one day. And I'm like, and I remember in my mind, I'm like, yeah, all right, good luck with that. You know, I was like, I don't see how that's going to happen, kind of thing. And then, and it got delayed by like a few days, but I remember on the day after Super Bowl, so it was like early February, and all of a sudden my phone just starts lighting up with friends going like, are you in this new game? And I was like, what new game? And they're like, this, it's called Apex Legends. And I'm like, doesn't sound like anything I've done, because we work under code names. So the projects are always like using code names. And I was like, I don't know. And then they were like, yeah, you sound like this guy who has like, he has like holograms. And I was like, that actually sounds familiar. And then I like real quick hopped on, download the game, and I'm like, no way. And then I just saw the phenomenal response from the fan base of the game in its entirety. And I was like, this is so crazy. And it just blew up and continues to just like, it just continues to blow my mind what they've been able to do, what they've been able to create, how they keep finding new elements of lore, finding new depth to these characters that would have been very easy to just make a battle royale thing where you don't really care about the people that you're, you know, sort of portraying or playing. And Respawn hasn't done that at all. In fact, they just keep upping the ante on like, oh, you think you know this character? Wait till you find out this. And I know they have so much more in store, and I wish I could like tease and talk about stuff, but No, it has turned out to be one of the most like just sort of like fortunate projects to be a part of, because the voice cast, like we've all become good, like, you know, Zoom buddies, and we have a text message feed that's just constantly blowing up with annoying messages to one another, and we all love to cyberbully Johnny, and because we love him so much. But it's like it's become one big fun dysfunctional family. And without divulging too much, I know that one of the writers said, you know, the goal from the get-go was to always kind of make family sort of like a theme, a sort of a thematical element to the storylines. And I went, that makes really good sense, because it's like what they've given all of us as a voice cast turned out to be just a group of people who kind of like enjoy getting together every now and then and getting on Zoom and supporting one another and talking to one another. And that's pretty rare. I mean, it's exceptionally rare. I mean, to have that kind of ongoing thing. I laughed one of the first times we did this, you know, 9 months ago. I mean, like early on in the game, it was like, hey, do you guys all want to get on, you know, on like a Zoom call? And I laughed. I was like, it's kind of funny to think that we're all doing right now what I think most fans assume anybody who works on a game, you know, would be doing, which is everybody hangs out. It's like, it never happens that way. It's like very often in games, you don't even see each other. You pass each other in the hallway when you're working, and yet we've done it, I don't know how many times. I've missed the karaoke event that they all did as a cast. That's all outside of Respawn. Respawn's not telling us like, hey, we want to send you guys here for like some camaraderie, you know, team building exercise. Like everybody just goes, hey, we all need to go, you know, do karaoke, and they all do it. They all show up and they all go. And I wasn't able to. I think I was actually in Idaho, and unable to go. But it's like they'll do big group events and have a lot of fun, and it's like it's just such a neat thing. So it's the whole Apex Legends thing has just been an absolute, you know, blessing and a blast to be a part of. And I'm stoked that Respawn and EA, that it's being received well, and that Mirage has been received well by the fan base, and that what we get to do with the character, you know, as a collaborative group, it's pretty cool. I'm very, very happy.
You guys have done an amazing job, and it makes my heart so happy to hear how close you guys are in real life.
It's crazy.
Yeah. To go back to what you were saying about how people think, what I thought, and I had always thought before doing this, was you guys, I pictured all voice actors there in a big room. There's one big director like right there, and it's all you in a room just going back and forth, and it's everyone in just one huge room, and the director's telling you certain things. That's what I thought. But then when I talk to like voice actors, they're like, that's completely wrong. That's not even close to what happens. Like,
no,
we're in
it's
different
so rare.
rooms. Yeah, we're in different rooms. We only see each other in passing or at conventions. And I'm like, this sounds so different from what I imagined.
It's yeah, I mean, it's when you think about it too, usually it's definitely that way for video games. The one exception that I've had with a video game recording, but it was only because a lot of the stuff that we were doing wasn't necessarily tied to gameplay, but we did Bug Snacks for the PS5 launch. And as a cast with Bug Snacks, we all did an ensemble record, which is what they call it. So in animation, ensemble records are pretty common. It just depends. Certain shows don't like to do it that way. Some shows do. You know, with Avengers Assemble, we did all of that as an ensemble record. Unikitty was kind of hit or miss. My gosh, I'm trying to think. And I'm working on another upcoming animated series that has yet to be declared, that we recorded throughout the pandemic as an ensemble record using Zoom and different technologies. But yeah, with video games, it's pretty rare because you're not, even though you guys might be interacting, there's so much to record, there's so many lines, and there's so much that goes on that it just makes sense to bring everybody in, you know, one at a time. So it's super rare that we get a chance to actually work with each other, see each other. I mean, I did only a few things on Arkham Origins. Troy and I, we worked together like only a couple of times. And I think they quickly nixed that idea because they were just like, you guys keep, you know, cracking each other up and you're supposed to be mortal enemies. Like, this isn't good. And, but I got to work with Martin Jarvis on a couple of sessions, which was so fun. Because even as a human being, that guy to me was like a father figure in a lot of ways, because it was just such a neat thing. He's so accomplished as an actor, and he's such a consummate gentleman, and he's just a neat, classy guy. So it was fun for me to be in the room with him in that regard. But most of the stuff that we do in voiceover is you're constantly sort of isolated, so that they can, you know, so that they can salvage the sound. And you know, even with the ensemble records, and a lot of on-camera actors will struggle with this, because in the on-camera world, like you and I talking, just general conversational stuff, people talk over each other. They, you know, we say, yeah, sure, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. You do all this stuff. You can't do that in a voiceover recording. Even when everyone's in the room, there's this quarter-second delay that you learn to get accustomed to. So it really messes with people's timing, because even if your line ends with ellipses of like ... and then the next actor's line starts with interrupting previous actor, you know, that kind of thing. A lot of the on-camera world is totally accustomed to having a natural ebb and flow to the way that they perform. Well, in the voiceover world, you can't do that, because if my voice is picked up by your microphone in the background as I'm cutting you off or interrupting you, and you don't want to use my take, but they want to use your take, they're going to hear my voice in your take, and it ruins your take. So there's things that, like, you know, so you have to have this, you know, you literally do this thing while you're performing with your fellow actors in an ensemble record. If I know you're about to interrupt me, I will deliver a performance that says, like, you know, like, Thor, how many times have I told you? You've got to just stop doing. And then he'll start in, like, you know, don't interrupt me, you know, like, or like, you know, I'm gonna interrupt you. You know, like, he'll start in with that, and we know that the engineers will align it in the editing to make him step over my line so that I naturally stop as he's interrupting me, kind of thing. But it's done on the fly in an ensemble record. For video games, they don't want to mess with that. It's just more of a pain in the butt, so they just record us all individually.
Now we're going to get into the fun parts of the interviews for me and all of my guests. Weird and wacky, where you have 1 minute to answer a series of rapid-fire questions, of weird and random ones. No one has beaten 15 questions. The person that has come the closest is Tara Platt with 12 questions answered. Will you beat Tara Platt?
I'm going to take Tara down. I think it's finally time, you know, because I think we all know, any of us who know Tara Platt, she's a horrible human being. And really, I question her choice in spouses, for one. And, you know, because again, another horrible human being, just, you know, no, I could there, like, now, see, you shouldn't have told me that, because I actually don't, like, nobody wants to beat Tara Platt in anything. It's like, and I also know that I can't. Intellectually, yeah, she's light years ahead of me, so I can't, you know. Thanks for the pressure. I really appreciate that. Just setting me up for failure. That's wonderful.
You're going to do great.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to start the timer in 3, 2, 1. Longest time period without taking a shower.
9 years.
Nastiest drink you've ever drunk.
Eggnog.
Nastiest food you've ever eaten.
Eggnog.
Favorite movie. 45.
Can't say.
Least favorite movie.
Anything involving eggnog.
Favorite holiday.
Definitely not Christmas, because there's eggnog.
Role you're most well known for.
Oh gosh, Sonic.
Movie you wish you were in.
Sonic.
Favorite video game.
Sonic.
Coolest trip you've ever been on. 13.
Italy.
A food that you wish didn't exist.
Eggnog. Always.
Food you refuse to cook. 2, 1. Ah.
All right, what did I get?
That was, I couldn't keep count. Jeez, probably got like 13.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap.
I think you might have beaten Tara, because you were going speeding through it.
Yeah, well, when you just keep repeating eggnog and Sonic, it's a little easy to win. So Sonic speed, yeah, definitely.
This is my last question for you, Roger. Again, before we cut off, I just want to say you've been an amazing guest. This is literally a dream come true. I'll talk to you more off screen about it, but just to get you on here is such an accomplishment of mine. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with me. It means more than you could ever know. So thank you. But my final question.
You've been very respectful, and I want to sing your praises as well. You're an excellent interviewer, and it was a joy to be a part of this. So thank you. Thank you.
What is your current message to the world? Obviously, we're in a pandemic. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. There are people who are feeling hopeless, who are scared. What would you say to the people who are feeling down and are in need of hope?
So this is always interesting, because it's like, who am I to tell anybody how to live their life? But maybe that is in its own way the message. I've had too many things happen in my life that just start having me kind of go, oh, okay. This is absolutely a human experience. Everybody's kind of going through a lot of the same stuff, and to try to find a way to, in such tumultuous times, find empathy, to feel safe, but I think it's just about realizing that it's like everything that we're all going through. I think it's very common. Whatever you're dealing with is probably very common. Whatever shame, guilt, frustration, anxiety, depression, joy, like all that kind of stuff, it's like, it's going to shift, it's going to change. You just got to try to stay healthy and keep riding it out as best you can, and find a way to stay present and to find some compassion and some empathy for both yourself and for other people. But even then, who am I? I started off this interview making fart sounds. So if you want to take any advice from me, it's like, I almost feel like, good luck in life if you're going to listen to me. As I say, like, I make duck farts into a microphone for a living. No, I don't. I don't know. Those questions to me are always interesting. It's like, I think we're all trying to find some sort of common ground, but I think that's also kind of part of the pursuit, is that we all are trying to do that. And we think that someone else has some sort of an answer or some sort of like profound advice. And it's like, it's a very solitary experience in a lot of ways, this existence. But don't you find that in the little community elements, that those moments make the solitary grind a little more worthwhile? So trying to find a way to make that sort of the focus and the goal, maybe that has some benefit to folks going forward. But again, I got no life advice, man. I got my own problems to deal with, so it's like, maybe that's a little inspirational to people as well, going like, man, the guy who gets to have that as his job, deals with human issues. Like, yes, so does everyone. Yeah, despite what we see on social media. Yeah, there is no one way to do it. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Stay present, stay healthy, wear a mask. For right now, let's try to stay healthy so we can get back to in-person convention appearances and ensemble records and all that good stuff that we took for granted for so long, right?
Right. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much, Roger. You've been an amazing guest. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on. This is Roger Craig Smith. Please go at him. Anything you want to plug before you head off? No. Just thank you. Yeah, follow this guy if you're not already following him, which you should be, I guess, if you're on Instagram Live. So, yeah. All right, guys. Support your local podcast interviewer, Instagram Liver friends. Thanks. All right, guys. Have an amazing day, and I will talk to you all soon. Peace. See you. Ciao.